I was recently asked by a group of young professionals, young Malay professionals, several questions, one of which was, what kind of battles do we choose to fight? Because they were preoccupied with their either professional work, their non-governmental organization work, and I think that all their endeavors are noble endeavors. But if you ask me what kind of battles you should always choose the ones which uphold the right, which uphold justice, which uphold moderation in society, especially at a time now when we are dealing with so many issues related to unity of the different races in Malaysia. And I find that a lot of the youth today have become too preoccupied with the political entertainment part of it, without even truly considering the issues, whether they are relevant or not. And I think this is a big problem today, because as a country we are comprised of different races, different religions, different cultures, different traditions, and we seem to be pitting one against the other, which is very unjust actually, and it's not good for the unity of this country. We have to understand that being such a rich, diverse country with its religion and cultures and peoples, we should actually bring more benefit than a loss to this country. Unfortunately, we have allowed some of our people in government to make decisions for us which on the outside appear rational, but in reality are not, because we understand rational to mean that the benefit of such decisions will outweigh the risk. And in many cases, the benefits have not been self-evident, and the benefits have not been beneficial to all. They may have benefited some, but not all. And I think this has to stop. I mean, we have a problem in this country among the newer generations. And this has been caused, I think, by policies in the past, which I think are a bit unjust. For instance, we think that a certain segment of society deserves an entitlement above and beyond anybody else. And I think this self-entitlement is not good, because from the religious point of view, it goes against the grain of religion, in fact. Now, as we said earlier, that this country is so rich in its cultural, religious traditions that we haven't learned much from each other. In fact, we should have taken this opportunity, not in terms of learning each other's religion, because we are not going to agree on that, but in terms of the fact that each of these religions, these major religions in this country, they all stem from good, from something good. And therefore we should be emphasizing that something good, while at the same time learning what makes us different. This is what makes us find out what makes us the same, what makes us similar. We don't look for similarities in order to find difference. We look for difference to find similarities. But we haven't done that. On the contrary, we have been more or less pushing one view on the rest. And this has not resulted in any benefit. In fact, those who think that they are entitled to some kind of special treatment have ended up being the losers themselves. And that's very unfortunate and very disuniting for this country. We have a lot of issues now being discussed with regard to language, with regard to religion. And I feel that with a country like ours, there is already a special position given to the religion of Islam and the Malay language in this country by the Constitution. And therefore, there shouldn't be too much argument about whether or not one is more precedent than the other. I mean, the Constitution is already clear. But rather than emphasize one race over the other is not right. That goes against the religious grain. I mean, look at Islam, for instance. Islam does not say that one race is better than the other. On the contrary, it says that Allah considers you to be noble. Those who Allah considers noble are those who are most faithful. It doesn't say that one race is better than the other. On the contrary, it says we are supposed to learn from each other. And therefore, this kind of ideology is an extremist ideology. And that's another aspect that we should address as well, because that was one of the questions that was asked to me as well, about the preoccupation with politics, that they resort to extremism. Now we have to understand that this extremism is like a double-sided coin. On the one hand, there's extremism of excess, where we go too much over the limit of what is prescribed. And then there's an extremism of defect, where we go far less than what is prescribed. Both of these are extreme positions. The trick is to find the middle path, and that requires wisdom, that requires knowledge, that requires discretion and discernment. And this is something that is especially true for the Malay language, because the Malay language is a scientific language. As such, it is the one that can lead to rational decisions. But if you are going to dispute the Malay language and start changing it, and start reducing the Malay language from a scientific language to one which is more ambiguous, which is what we have actually done over the past decades. And this is very sad, when the Malay language has a rich tradition of the arts and the humanities, a very rich tradition of the arts and the humanities. We have now put that aside. We have now emphasized what we think is similar to ilm and call it science, and that's not the same thing. That ilm and science are two different things altogether, where ilm is the umbrella of science. But this science that we understand today is understood within the context of the Western idea of science, which is actually technology. And we have taken that idea thinking that we are going to become scientific, when actually we are not. The scientific part of our language is from the humanities, from the tradition of literature, from the tradition of the arts, from the tradition of music, from the tradition of the sciences of the Muslims. But we have ignored all of those in favor of the more typical modern things that we enjoy. We have taken away the connection between our language, our religion, and the Creator. We have removed certain things, like for instance, if now we want to include a syllabus in the school that's called ethics or moral, we call it etika atau moral. But that's not right, because we need to use the word akhlaq that already exists in our language. And that will actually be able to mirror what we are as a created being and who created us. But it loses that meaning if you use words like moral and ethic. Of course, now when we speak in English, we have to say ethics, but what we mean is akhlaq. That's another thing. In addition to that, we are now fighting over banal issues. People have said to me as well that we should not play politics, as if politics is something that is a playful thing, without realizing that politics is a serious matter. It's not something to be played with or bandied about. And when they say things like that, these are coming from politicians themselves who advise us, and I use the word advise liberally, who advise us not to play politics. It means that they themselves think that this politics is a game, where we are the pawns in the game that they should just play with. And that's not the case. Politics is a serious matter. Leadership is a serious matter. Now, another question someone asked me was, what kind of traits do we look for in a leader? Now, I will always use the advice of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet Muhammad was asked also, what is a good man? And the Prophet Muhammad replied, a good man is one who, when he speaks, he tells the truth. When he's given a trust, he keeps that trust. When he makes a promise, he doesn't break it. That is a good man. So first and foremost, to be a good leader, you have to be a good man with all those traits. But in addition to that, because you are a leader, you need to have the authority of command, or what the Muslims will say, ulul amr. Now, this kind of thing is required of a politician and a political leader. But if you think that it's a game, then you are not fit to be where you are. This is what we need to consider nowadays, because a lot of things that are happening today are in reality minor issues that we get so excited about. But the major issues, like for instance education, the proper place of the Malay language, the fact that humanities need to be emphasized as much as, if not more, than the sciences, which are clearly today more geared towards the electronic media. Now, instead of taking this as an aid or as a tool for education, we have taken it as a substitute for education, and that's a big mistake. A lot of the professionals, a lot of the teachers, a lot of the educators, they realize this. But how is it that their voices are not heard? We have had jawatan kuasa upon jawatan kuasa when it comes to education for decades, and we still haven't resolved this problem because we are not listening to those who are educated, to those who are knowledgeable, to those who know what they're talking about. On the contrary, we seem to be listening to those who are more flatterers of the political realm, flatterers of political corridor, afraid that their sustenance will be wrenched away from them if they go against the political vein. Now, that is one of the things which unite us. We are not supposed to be just mere followers. There is always supposed to be someone within the society who can point out errors in the society, who can point out errors in the leadership, who can point out errors in government policy. There has to be people like that. There have to be people who can, from time and again, criticize, give constructive criticism. And the leadership should not become so sensitive that they can't take it. They can't take the criticism. This, unfortunately, is our problem. Whenever we have criticized, we have always been accused of being too critical or overly critical. But in reality, what we are trying to do is we are trying to give advice, good advice, true advice. We have great respect for the Malay language. We want to tell those in authority, those in policy, that the Malay language, when we say that the Malay language needs to become enriched, we don't mean that you are supposed to be the one leading it. You are not. The politician is not the one leading this charge. It is the one who has knowledge, the educator, the one who is an ahli of that particular field. He is the one who is supposed to tell you what to do and how to do it so that you can then put it into policy, not the other way around. But if you think that you are the one who is supposed to do it, then I'm sorry, but you are not going to succeed. They're not going to prosper. You're not going to benefit. This, unfortunately, is the condition of the Muslim youth today in this country. We become a bit confused. We become a bit ambivalent with regard to what's going on around us. And who is to blame for that? Sometimes it's the policy to blame. If you have, like I said, if you have this policy where it favors one race over another, that one race becomes engrossed in feeling that he is entitled to something special. And that is not right. That goes against the grain of religion, as we said earlier. We are not here on this earth to own things, to lord over other people. We are not on this earth for that purpose. The only thing that we truly own is our niyyah. Everything else is on trust for us. And if we are supposed to be good human beings, we are supposed to stick and hold on to that trust. I hope in future I will make a longer video and explain more things in greater detail. But for now, I think this is sufficient. And maybe next time we can make another video, maybe in the Malay language. But for now, as I said, I think this is sufficient and will suffice. Thank you.